can I point out a few things that I saw with Sheridan that I think really worked to get the audience warmed up to him?
Yeah.
When he had this, these a few whimsical moments, like, I had an orange and he's excited about produce, right? We mentioned with Jason's potato, and, that being out on the rim in a ship, they're not getting fresh produce, right? For a long period of time. And then, he's also excited about the fact that they have real water showers, which is,
For
these are,
certain personnel.
yeah, right. For the upper crust, and so it's kind of giving you this just this little bit of like, this guy has a capacity to be happy, about small things, whereas, uh,
Oranges. Oranges. He
or,
had oranges
You
on the
know,
shuttle.
I just
right,
had a thought because his the whole thing with the water shower, in the Navy, especially with submarines, there is a thing called a Hollywood shower where if you do well, my understanding of this is from Tom Clancy novels, so I may not have this entirely right, but he did a lot of research, so I'm pretty confident that this is true.
Mm,
That because your limits are you're limited on your resources, how much water you have. You generally you're splash a rag, wipe yourself down. You're not able to just keep the water running,
hmm
except if you get a reward of a Hollywood shower, you get to. And it's a little tiny detail, but the fact that Sheridan comes in, he's like, oh, hey, you guys have water showers. Yeah, it struck me as like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. I don't know if Straczynski has any experience, a background in the Navy or not, but they made me think of that a little
well,
bit.
it also gave a little bit of background on the station too, a little bit of world building there about,
hmm
Yep.
water reclamation and the fact that, their hydroponics and, growing ability is, far and above what ships have, for example, which is
Right.
presumably none. So I thought that was a
Well, we
nice
know they
little
have
touch.
coffee.
And I
Well,
wonder if that's going to come up at some point later in the future. Maybe.
Maybe. I mean,
The
you know,
fact that
I
they have
we'll
all
see
the
it. We'll
different.
see how precious a hamburger is in the upcoming
Well,
episodes. And
I'm
a
Rat
thinking
steak
burger.
and
I'm thinking more along well because okay, see the we started the garden coming out of pandemic, and a lot of people talk about victory gardens back during the war, during World War I, World War II,
right.
and the idea of self sustainability. Water reclamation. We have rain barrels. We have the stuff that we do in the garden and homesteading. And then when he sits there and says, you talk about the water reclamation and the resources that the station has, I'm just wondering if that's going to come into play at some point.
Well, remember also, JMS was always a fan of BBC television. And one of the big shows out there, if you remember Victory Garden on PBS,
hmm
that would always teach you, gardening tips and stuff like that. But back then, extensive that you can put your own garden in the back in the back your backyard. To the point that it was being pushed back then. Now it's it since COVID, now you're getting it. People are getting back into it again once again.
Yeah.
But we, after that went off the air, things disappeared, and now we're back in again. As far as that,
well, there was one other thing that I noticed with Sheridan, that I really liked, and I didn't remember this in particular, but in our earlier episodes, remember, like, especially the first couple, where it's like there's something going on, and Sinclair's like, I'm going to go address this myself. I'm going to go out in a Star Fury and, grab the ship that's going to run into us, or I'm going to go, track down a murderer or something. And in this episode, when they, Sheridan quickly figured out what was going on with the Mimbari, with Kalain, it's he showed up with a security team, right? They busted
Mhm.
into to Len's quarters with several security officers. It wasn't, and to me that just rang so much better. It wasn't this Kirk Spock kind of thing. I mean, he was there because he was seeing what was going on, but they didn't have a need to put him as the hero guy right in front.
He wasn't the first one through the door.
Right.
Yeah.
He was, and I think it worked especially well for this because it's like he's the commanding officer now, right? It's and it put him in that position nicely. I think it's another little bit that helped do that. And overall, beyond that, it's just such a contrast between Sinclair and Sheridan. Sheridan seemed he was competent. I mean, everything he did was screamed competence, right? I mean,
Right.
he was on the ball, but it wasn't like, oh, I just know everything and look at me. It just seemed reasonable. What do you guys think?
Well,
No,
remember,
I
this
would
is
agree.
only episode 1, and we're still developing on Sheridan. So
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot
that's the
more to
thing
Sheridan
is-
coming.
That's
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
thing is there's a lot of development of Sheridan in this
one episode. Yeah.
And I mean, he comes on, he's very relaxed with Ivanova at the beginning. I mean, they knew each other before, but she would have been a more junior officer. She
Mhm.
wouldn't have worked directly necessarily for him. Like she would have been one of a bunch of them. So I don't think they're that close.
But-
it's not
right.
like
But
she was his 2IC like this one.
he
but-
mentions though, he recognizes that she's the guy, she's the
Right.
one that's going to help him ease into
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he's
go ahead.
pretty relaxed
And builds her
you know.
up.
Yeah,
You
he
know.
builds her up a little bit. He's like
'Cause
talking about, I really miss oranges. I thought that was a little bit over the top for a
I
captain
didn't.
to be that, familiar, especially on first meeting, but that could just be his personality.
Well, no, you got to
that's how he
remember
is.
with where the Agamemnon was, they were out at the rim, at the edge of the galaxy, in patrol on there and doing research work. So basically, and you'll hear a lot more of this going forward with a lot of other ships that come along to Babylon 5, is that they've gone out further, to where points where mankind has not gone to yet, or any other race has gone to. It's that edge that they just haven't gone beyond it as of yet. Because they're unable to, because it would take so long. They would take too long to come back. They only get to one point, then come back. But the thing about it is, how much food do you carry? How can you carry that much food unless you have an arboretum built into the ship, which technically the Earth ships don't have gravity. They don't have gravity control. They have just a rotation gravity control that basically has to continue to circle, similar to what Babylon 5 does. Does that
Right.
little circle thing. These ships do the same thing. So it's kind of difficult to put it in a small ship of that nature on there. So they're going to have to be like on tablets or something, whatever, what they're doing as far as how they eat.
Yeah. Yum Yum brings up a good point here. It's Sheridan does get a little uppity with the Great Council guy, and also with Kalain, where he's
I think part of that is he doesn't like Mimbaria. He probably has a more negative attitude towards them than any other race.
but I think it's played relatively subtly. It's not
Yeah.
like, I am Minbari, I'm gonna, which again, it's not ham-fisted. I'm just so elated that we've got some nuance finally in the writing.